The night sky over the alien city was full of strange colors, glowing mist drifting between tall towers, and streets alive with traders calling out their goods. The air smelled of smoke, spices, and secrets. Crowds of alien people moved like restless waves, each face lost in its own world. But in that restless sea walked a mother and her young daughter. Both wore cloaks to hide their features, and the girl clutched her mother's hand tightly. The girl was not like the others around her. Her skin shone faintly under the neon lamps, and her large eyes reflected the city lights like two tiny moons. Hidden under her mother's cloak, pressed close to her chest, was an old amulet, glowing faintly with golden light. It was not only jewelry, it was a memory of their bloodline, a gift from ancestors long gone. The mother whispered to her daughter, "Stay close. Do not let go. This amulet must never leave us." The girl nodded, her heart beating faster, though she did not fully understand why. The streets grew darker as they turned into a narrow marketplace. The crowd thinned and shadows grew longer. The girl felt uneasy, but before she could speak, rough voices echoed behind them. A group of masked figures stepped out of the shadows. Blocking their path, their leader, tall and thin, laughed in a sharp, cruel voice. Well, what do we have here? A mother and child, carrying something that glows like treasure." The mother froze, her hand tightening around the amulet. She whispered to her daughter, "Stay behind me." But the girl's fear grew when the robbers rushed forward, their sharp hands grabbing at the cloak. In the struggle, the fabric tore and the girl's shirt ripped open across the shoulder. She gasped, pulling back, her face burning with fear and shame. The crowd of merchants nearby looked up for a moment, then turned their eyes away, pretending not to see. No one stepped forward, no one spoke. The leader grabbed the mother by the arm and ripped the amulet away from her chest. The golden glow flashed in his hand, and his eyes lit with greed. "This will sell for more than your lives are worth," he sneered. The mother cried out, trying to reach for it, but she was shoved to the ground. The girl screamed, kneeling by her mother, tears running down her face. The robbers laughed, their shadows falling over her. For the first time, the girl felt completely powerless and completely alone. But then, from the edge of the market, a new voice cut through the noise, calm and steady. "Give it back." The robbers turned, their laughter breaking into confusion. A human stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in worn clothes, his eyes steady and cold. The girl blinked, shocked. She had seen humans before, but they were always busy with their own lives, never stepping into alien affairs. Why was this one standing here now? The leader narrowed his eyes and grinned. "A human? You think you can order us around? This is none of your business." The man did not move, his hands at his sides, his voice calm but unshaken. "It became my business the moment you touched them." The crowd whispered again, surprised. Some shook their heads. No one in this city challenged the gang, not even guards. The girl felt her breath catch, torn between fear and hope. Her shirt still hung in tatters, her mother still on the white ground, and this stranger now stood between them and death. The leader of the robbers stepped closer, holding the amulet high. "Do you even know what this is, human? Do you know what you risk by interfering?" The man's eyes did not move from the leader's. "I don't need to know, I only see what matters, and you hurt a mother and a child, that is enough." The robbers burst into laughter, but there was unease in their voices. They had seen fear in many eyes before, but not in this man's. The girl clung to her mother's hand, whispering, "Who is he? Why is he helping us?" The mother shook her head, unable to answer. The marketplace grew tense, the silence heavy. The robbers circled the human, sharp weapons glinting in the dim light. The leader sneered, "Very well, hero. If you want to die for them, we will grant your wish." The girl's heart pounded louder than the crowd's whispers, louder than her own sobs. She had never seen anyone stand up against the gang, not even the strongest aliens. But here stood one man, a stranger, a human, willing to face them all. And as the robbers raised their weapons, the human took a single step forward, his voice calm but his presence burning with silent fire. "Try me." And in that breath the story truly began. A torn shirt, a stolen amulet, a helpless child. and one human who refused to walk away. The air in the market was heavy. No one moved, no one spoke. The human stood like a wall of stone, calm but unshaken while the robbers circled him. The alien girl clung to her mother's side, her torn shirt loose at the shoulder, her heart trembling. She had never seen such silence before in a crowded place. Every eye was on the stranger, every breath waiting to see what he would do. The leader of the robbers grinned with sharp teeth. "This fool wants to be a hero," he mocked, his voice sharp as broken glass. "Kill him slowly. Make the crowd remember what happens when anyone dares to stand in our way." The other robbers raised their weapons, metal and bone blades gleaming in the dim lights. The girl whispered to her mother, "He will die. They are too many." But her mother's eyes stayed on the human, searching his face for a reason she could not name. The human did not step back. Instead, he took one slow breath, then spoke, softly. "You will not touch them again." One robber lunged at him, blade aimed straight for his chest. The crowd gasped, certain this was the end, but the human's hand moved like lightning. He caught the blade with his bare palm, blood running instantly across his skin. The robber froze in shock. The human's grip was unbreakable, his eyes cold as stone. With a twist, he wrenched the weapon from the robber's hand and flung it across the street. The sound of metal striking stone rang louder than any voice. The crowd erupted in whispers. "Impossible," one alien hissed. "He stopped the blade with his hand." Another gasped. The girl's wide eyes filled with shock. She had never seen strength like this, not even in the warriors of her own people. The other robbers did not hesitate. They rushed at him together, but the human moved with strange calm. Each strike measured. Each step solid, he dodged one blade, drove his elbow into another attacker's chest, sending the alien crashing into the ground. He blocked another strike with his forearm. Ignoring the blood that dripped from his wounds, each movement told a story. Not of rage, not of hate, but of determination. The crowd had never seen a human fight like this, not with such quiet fury, not with such purpose. The leader snarled, his eyes burning with anger. "This one thinks he is stronger than us, break him." 3 robbers attacked at once, their blades cutting the air. The human ducked low, grabbed a loose stone from the ground, and struck upward with sudden force. The stone cracked against one robber's jaw, dropping him instantly. Another tried to stab from behind, but the human spun and kicked him back into a fruit stand, crates crashing in every direction. The last robber swung high, but the human stepped forward, too close for the blade to land, and drove his fist into the alien's throat. The robber fell choking, clawing at the dirt. The girl's mother pulled her daughter close, whispering, "Do you see, child? Do you see what courage looks like?" The girl nodded, though her hands still trembled. She could not look away from the human, even as blood dripped down his arm. He fought not for himself, but for them, for a mother and child he did not know, and that made her heart ache with a strange mix of fear and awe. The leader of the robbers growled, his sharp teeth bared. "You think you can win, human? You are bleeding, you are alone, and soon you will fall." But the human wiped the blood from his palm and stood tall. His voice was steady. "I don't need to win against all of you. I just need to make sure you never touch them again." The words carried through the market like thunder. Even the crowd fell silent, struck by the weight of those simple words. The robbers hesitated, fear flickering in their eyes. This was not how it was supposed to go. Humans were supposed to be weak here, silent, always stepping aside. But this one was different. He was not fighting for gold, not for power, but for something deeper, and that unsettled them more than his fists. The leader spat on the ground and signaled his men. "Enough, fall back," he hissed, his pride wounded. The robbers, groaning and limping, obeyed. But as they stepped back into the shadows, the leader raised the stolen amulet high. "This is not over, human," he sneered. "You cannot fight us all, and you cannot protect them forever." With that, the gang melted into the darkness, leaving only silence behind. The human stood still for a moment, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Then he turned, his eyes softening as they met the girl's. Her torn shirt clung to her shoulder, her face streaked with tears. But her gaze locked on him with something new. Hope. The mother struggled to her feet, holding her daughter close. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why would you risk your life for us?" The human looked at her quietly, blood still dripping from his hand. "Because no one else did," he answered. The crowd, which had been silent, began to whisper again. Some were ashamed, others in awe, but none could forget what they had seen. The girl pressed her face against her mother's cloak, whispering, "He saved us." And as the human stood over them, his shadow long against the broken market stalls, the story of one human against many had only just begun. The night air felt colder after the robbers slipped into the shadows. The human stood quietly, his hand bleeding, his chest rising with steady breaths. The marketplace slowly returned to life. But the crowd kept their distance, whispering in low voices. Some called him reckless. Others called him brave, but no one dared step close. The alien girl clung to her mother's cloak, her torn shirt still hanging loose on her shoulder, her wide eyes fixed on the stranger. The mother reached for the human's arm, her voice low. "We must go, they will come back, and next time with more men." The human nodded, his jaw set. He glanced at the alley behind them, dark and narrow. "This way," he said firmly, and without waiting, he led them into the twisting maze of stone and shadow. The alleys were damp, lined with broken stalls and strange glowing fungi that crept up the walls. The girl's steps echoed softly, her heart still racing. Every corner felt dangerous. Every shadow seemed alive, she whispered. "Why did you help us?" The human did not answer at first, his eyes scanning each turn. Finally, he said, "Because no one else would, and because it was the right thing to do." The girl's mother limped, slightly, holding her side where she had been shoved to the ground. The girl supported her with one arm, while glancing again at the human. There was blood dripping from his palm, leaving a faint trail. "You're hurt," the girl said softly. He shook his head. "It's nothing. Keep moving." Behind them, faint voices echoed, harsh and angry. The gang was hunting already, their footsteps spreading across the city like wolves chasing prey. The girl's mother stiffened, whispering, "They are closing in." The human stopped at a crossing, scanning both paths. One led upward toward a crowded district, the other, down toward the abandoned ruins. He chose the ruins, saying, "Crowds will not help. People there will look away just like before. In the ruins we can hide." They moved quickly, the girl's small feet stumbling over broken stone, her shirt caught on a jagged wall tearing further. But she did not stop. Her eyes kept glancing at the man who led them, his back straight, his steps steady. He did not look afraid, even with hunters at their heels. Finally, they reached a crumbling courtyard, its walls half broken, covered in vines. The human motioned for them to rest in the shadows of a fallen arch. The girl's mother sank down with a sigh, her face pale. The girl crouched beside her, brushing dust from her torn shirt, her mind still spinning. She whispered again, "Why us? Why risk your life for us?" The human crouched opposite them, his eyes dark but calm. "Because you were alone. Because no one else would stand," he said simply. The girl studied him, her young heart feeling a strange warmth beneath her fear. The mother touched the empty space on her chest where the amulet had been. Her voice shook. "That amulet was not just gold. It carries power, a secret my people have kept for generations. If they unlock it, they could bring ruin to many worlds." The human's gaze sharpened. "Then we cannot let them keep it." The girl looked at him with surprise. "You mean to fight them again?" He gave a short nod. "Yes, because if I don't, no one will." The wind howled through the broken courtyard, carrying faint shouts closer. The robbers were searching, their voices echoing like a dark promise. The girl shivered, pressing against her mother. "They will find us." The human looked at her, his voice calm. "Not tonight. I will get you out." He stood, scanning the walls for an escape path. There was a narrow opening behind the vines, leading deeper underground. The girl's mother shook her head weakly. "That way is dangerous. Old tunnels, unstable, no one goes there." The human's voice was steady. That is why it will keep us alive." He pulled aside the vines, revealing the dark mouth of the tunnel. The air inside smelled of dust and forgotten time. The girl hesitated, her torn shirt brushing her skin, her fear rising. But when the human looked back and nodded at her, she felt a strange courage. She took her mother's hand, whispering, "Come, we must trust him." Slowly, they slipped into the tunnel, the human leading the way. Behind them, the robbers' voices grew louder, closer, but the vines closed again, hiding the path. Inside the tunnel, the darkness was heavy, broken only by the faint glow of the girl's skin and the human's steady steps. The walls were rough stone, dripping with water, the air damp and cold. Every sound echoed, their breaths, their footsteps, the distant rumble of the city above. The girl's mother whispered, "We cannot run forever, they will not stop, they want the amulet's secret." The human's voice answered quietly, "Then we make sure they never unlock it." The girl walked between them, her heart torn. Fear of the robbers clawed at her chest, but hope for the human's strength burned inside her. She had seen him bleed, she had seen him hurt, but still he walked with unbroken will. And for the first time, she wondered if this human might be more than just a man. Perhaps he was something her people had never understood, a protector who fought not for gain, but for what was right. The tunnel stretched on, winding deeper into the earth. The robbers' voices faded behind them, lost in the maze of alleys and ruins, but the danger was far from over. The girl could feel it in her bones. This was only the beginning. The amulet was gone. The hunters were relentless, and their escape had only bought them time. She held her mother's hand tighter and looked at the human's back as he led them forward. Somehow she knew their paths were now tied together, and the night was not yet done testing them. The tunnels stretched deeper into the earth, twisting. Like the veins of some ancient beast, the human led the way, his shadow tall against the damp stone walls. Behind him, the alien girl walked with her mother, their hands clasped tightly together. The sound of dripping water echoed in the dark, each drop like a slow heartbeat. The girl's mother breathed heavily. Still weak from the struggle in the marketplace, her steps dragged, but her will remained strong. The girl whispered, "Mother, we must rest. You are hurt." The woman shook her head, her voice strained. "Not yet. They may still be near. We must keep moving until we are truly hidden." Finally, after what felt like hours, the tunnel opened into a wide cavern. Strange crystals glowed faintly from the ceiling, washing the stone chamber in pale blue light. The human stopped, scanning the space, then nodded. "We will rest here. They cannot find us in this maze, not tonight." The mother sank onto a rock, clutching her side. The girl sat close beside her, brushing dust from her torn shirt, her eyes flicking again and again toward the human. He stood near the entrance, listening, his hand still bleeding from the earlier fight, but his face calm. The silence grew heavy until the mother finally spoke, her voice low, almost a whisper. "That amulet they stole was more than a family heirloom. It was more than gold or stone. It carries the last secret of my people, a truth hidden for generations." The girl looked up at her mother in shock. "You never told me." The mother's eyes softened, filled with sorrow. "You were too young. I wanted to protect you, but now the secret is lost to thieves, and the danger is greater than ever." The human turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Tell me," he said quietly. "If I am to help you, I must know what we face." The mother hesitated, then slowly lifted a small chain from under her cloak. At the end of the chain was a broken fragment of crystal, faintly glowing. The amulet was once whole, but long ago it was divided into pieces, one for each guardian family. Together they form a map to something buried deep beneath this world, something powerful enough to shift the balance of many races. The girl's eyes widened. "A map," she whispered. The mother nodded. "Yes, a map to the Heart Forge, an ancient machine built before our time. It can create weapons of terrible power or heal entire worlds depending on the hands that control it." The human's jaw tightened. "And now the robbers have a piece of that map." The mother lowered her gaze, her voice heavy with guilt. Yes, and they will not stop until they gather the others. If they succeed, countless lives will suffer. The girl's chest tightened with fear, but also with anger. They cannot be allowed to win, she said, her voice trembling but firm. The human looked at her. Surprised by the strength in her young voice, he gave a short nod. You are right, they cannot. The cavern fell into silence again, only the faint hum of crystals filling the air. The girl watched the human as he sat near the wall, binding, his wounded hand with a strip of cloth. Her thoughts tangled like knots. Why had he risked himself for them? Why had he stayed even after learning the danger? He was just a human. Yet his presence filled the cave like an unspoken shield. Her mother's voice broke the silence, softer now. Do you know why the crowd did not help us? The girl shook her head. The mother sighed. Because fear is stronger than kindness for most. They feared the robbers more than they cared for us. But this man, he feared nothing. That is why he is dangerous to them. The girl looked at him again, and in her heart, a spark of respect grew brighter. The human glanced at her, his eyes calm, steady, almost gentle. He said, I do not fear them, but I fear what happens if no one stands against them. The mother closed her eyes, whispering, Perhaps fate placed you in our path, human. Perhaps it was meant to be. The girl leaned against her mother, her mind still racing. She remembered the torn shirt, the cruel laughter of the robbers, the helplessness she felt. But she also remembered the moment the human caught a blade with his bare hand, the moment he stood unbroken before them. That memory now burned inside her like a torch. She whispered to herself, He will not let them win. Suddenly, the cavern shook with a low rumble, dust falling from the ceiling. The human was on his feet instantly, his hand reaching for the wall. What was that? The girl gasped. The mother's eyes widened in fear. They are searching the tunnels, blasting walls to smoke us out. The rumble grew louder, voices echoing faintly in the distance. The robbers were not far, and they had brought tools of destruction. The human's face hardened. We must move again. We cannot wait for them to break through. The girl's mother tried to rise, but staggered, her strength fading. The human stepped forward and helped her up, steady and firm. You are not alone, he said simply. I will carry you if I must, but we cannot stay. The girl stood quickly, clutching her mother's cloak, her fear turning into determination. She looked at the human, her voice clear. Then we go together, wherever this path leads. The crystals glowed brighter as if hearing her words, filling the cavern with strange light. The human glanced at them, then at the two aliens before him. A silent promise hung in the air, heavy and unbroken. They would not let the robbers control the secret of the Heart Forge, not while they still had breath. And so, into the deeper tunnels they went, three figures bound by fate, walking into a darkness full of danger, each carrying a truth heavier than any weapon. The girl's heart beat faster with every step, not just from fear, but from the knowledge that their fight had only just begun. The deeper tunnels twisted like a maze, carrying the three travelers further away from the city above. The human walked in front, his steps steady, his eyes sharp even in the dim glow of the crystals that lined the walls. Behind him came the alien girl and her mother, their breaths uneven, their faces pale but determined. The silence was broken only by the sound of dripping water and the faint rumble of the city far above them. The girl's torn shirt hung loosely on her shoulder, and though fear weighed heavy on her heart, she kept walking. Every time she stumbled, the human slowed just enough to steady her, never speaking much, never boasting, only guiding. She watched him quietly, trying to understand what made him different. He was hurt, bleeding, and yet he carried himself with strength that seemed larger than his body. The mother's voice finally broke the silence, weak but calm. The robbers will not give up. They will spread through the city. They will follow us into every shadow, every corner, until they find us. The human nodded. Then we must keep moving faster than they can chase. Above ground, the gang had already begun their hunt. The leader snarled with rage, holding the glowing amulet fragment tight in his fist. "Find them," he barked, his voice echoing through the streets. "We will crush that human and we will take the rest of the secret." Dozens of his men scattered through the alleys, spreading word, bribing informants, even threatening the guards who pretended not to see. Fear ran like fire through the marketplace, and the name of the human spread in whispers, a human who dared stand against the gang. Back in the tunnels, the girl's mother stumbled, nearly falling. The human caught her before she hit the ground, his strong arms holding her steady. "You cannot push yourself too hard," he said, but she shook her head. "We cannot stop, not here. If they catch us in the tunnels, we will not escape." The girl bit her lip, fighting tears. She wanted to scream at the world, to cry for help, but she knew no one would come. No one but him. She whispered softly, "Why do they fear you, human?" He looked at her, his eyes calm. "Because I do not fear them." The tunnels opened into another cavern, larger and colder, filled with broken pillars and ancient carvings. The human paused, scanning the space. The girl's eyes widened as she traced the carvings with her fingers. Strange figures were etched into the walls. Warriors, stars, and a great machine, glowing like a heart. "It's the heart forge," the mother whispered. "Even here, its memory survives." The human studied the carvings, his jaw tightening. "They want this power," he said. "But power in their hands will burn everything." The girl nodded, her voice trembling but firm. "Then we cannot let them have it, even if we must fight again." Before anyone could answer, faint echoes stirred from the tunnel behind them. Footsteps, many footsteps growing louder. The human's eyes narrowed, his voice low but sharp. "They are coming." The mother's face paled. "Already." The girl's heart pounded, her chest tight. "We cannot outrun them." The human looked around quickly, spotting a collapsed section of wall. "There," he said, pulling aside broken stones, revealing a narrow passage. "Go, quickly, before they find us." The girl hesitated, looking at him. "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you," he answered, his voice steady, but his eyes told her the truth. He was ready to hold the line if he must. The mother urged her daughter forward, and together they slipped into the narrow passage, the stones scraping their skin. Behind them, the human turned, facing the tunnel where the footsteps grew louder. Shadows stretched across the cavern floor, torches flickering, voices laughing cruelly. The robbers were near, too near, inside the narrow passage. The girl clutched her mother's hand, whispering in fear. "He will not escape, they will kill him." But her mother whispered back, "No, child. He is not like the others. He will fight as long as he breathes." The human pressed his hand against the wall, steadying himself, his wound aching, his breath sharp, but his eyes did not falter. He thought of the girl, of her torn shirt, her helpless cry when the robbers struck. He thought of the mother's desperate grip on the amulet, and the cruel laughter of the gang. And he knew he could not allow fear to rule this night, not while they still depended on him. The cavern filled with voices as the robbers entered, their leader in front, the amulet glowing in his hand. "There he is," the leader spat. "The human who thinks he is more than he is." The human stood tall, his voice low but firm. "I am enough to stop you." The gang laughed, spreading out like wolves ready to tear apart their prey. But there was unease in their eyes, for they had seen him fight before, and they knew he was no ordinary man. The girl, peeking through a crack in the stones, held her breath, her small hands shaking. She wanted to cry out, to beg him to run, but her voice would not leave her throat. Her heart whispered, "Please do not fall." The leader raised his blade, shouting, "End him, and then we take the others." The cavern roared with footsteps as the gang surged forward. The human clenched his fists, his body burning with pain and strength, and once more he stepped forward, unbroken. The cavern shook with the echo of rushing feet. Dozens of robbers poured in, their blades flashing under the glow of the crystals, their voices a storm of cruelty. At the front stood the leader, holding the stolen amulet high, its golden light spilling across the stone. He sneered at the human, his sharp teeth gleaming. "This is where you die, stranger. This is where your foolish courage ends." The human stood alone in the open space, blood dripping from his hand, his chest rising with slow breaths. His shadow stretched long against the stone floor. Behind the broken wall, the alien girl and her mother watched through cracks. Their hearts pounding with fear, the girl whispered, "He cannot fight them all." But her mother's voice answered softly, "He will try." The first robber lunged, blade swinging low. The human sidestepped, his fist crashing into the alien's jaw, dropping him in one blow. The second came from behind, but the human twisted, grabbing his arm and throwing him hard into the ground. The fight had begun, the cavern filled with chaos, steel clashing, bodies colliding, voices shouting. The human moved like a storm, every strike sharp, every step solid. He blocked one blade with his forearm, ignoring the blood, then drove his elbow into another attacker's face. He ducked under a swing and smashed his shoulder into a robber's chest, sending him crashing into a pillar. But no matter how many fell, more rushed forward, their numbers endless. The leader watched, his grin fading, unease flickering in his eyes. He had expected the human to break quickly, to fall under the weight of many. But this man fought with something more than strength. He fought with will, with fire that refused to die. The girl pressed closer to the wall, her hands trembling, her torn shirt brushing against the stone. She wanted to look away, but she could not. Every strike, every drop of blood, every breath of the human pulled her deeper into the moment. She whispered, "Please do not fall." The robbers grew angrier, striking faster, their blades cutting shallow wounds across the human's arms and shoulders. His body ached. His breath grew heavier, but his eyes stayed sharp. He fought not for himself, but for the mother and child hiding behind him. Every strike he made carried that purpose, and it gave him strength even as his blood stained the ground. Suddenly, the leader stepped forward, raising the amulet high. The golden glow pulsed brighter as if reacting to the chaos. The mother gasped, whispering, "No, he is trying to awaken it." The human's eyes flicked toward the light, and in that instant a blade cut across his side, tearing through cloth and skin. He staggered, but did not fall. With a roar, he drove his fist into the robber who had struck him, sending him sprawling. The leader laughed. "See how he bleeds, see how he breaks." But the human straightened, his voice strong even through the pain. "You will not have them, and you will not have this power." With renewed fury, he charged through the attackers, fists and feet striking like hammers. He grabbed one by the throat, slamming him into another. He spun, kicking two more away. 4. Every wound he took, he gave back twice as much. The cavern floor became littered with groaning bodies, the crowd of robbers shrinking. The girl's mother whispered, awe in her voice, "He is only one, yet he stands against many." The girl's eyes filled with tears, not of fear but of something stronger, she whispered, "He fights for us." The leader snarled, anger boiling in his eyes. "Enough!" he shouted, stepping forward, his blade gleaming, the amulet glowing brighter. He slashed at the human with deadly speed, but the man blocked with his wounded arm, gritting his teeth. As blood poured with his free hand, he struck hard, knocking the leader back. The amulet slipped from his grasp, skidding across the stone floor, glowing brighter with each second. The girl gasped, her eyes fixed on the shining object. Without thinking, she squeezed through the cracks in the wall and ran toward it. "Child, no!" her mother cried, reaching out, but it was too late. The girl's small hands closed around the amulet, the golden light spilling across her torn shirt, across her face. The robbers froze, their eyes widening. The leader shouted, "Take it from her!" But the human moved faster, placing himself between the girl and the robbers, his body a shield. Blood dripped from his wounds, his breath heavy, but his stance unbroken. He looked down at the girl, his voice calm. "Hold it tight. Do not let go." She nodded, tears in, her eyes but her grip firm. The leader screamed in fury, charging with his blade raised high. The human met him head on, their clash shaking the cavern. Fists struck, blades cut, blood sprayed, but neither gave in. The girl held the amulet close, its light pulsing in rhythm. With her heartbeat, the mother pulled herself from the wall, shouting with all her strength, "You will never take it." The fight raged, each blow louder than thunder, each strike echoing through the cavern. The human's body screamed with pain, but his spirit roared louder. He fought not for glory, not for power, but because it was right, and in that truth, he found the strength to stand against the impossible. The leader staggered, blood running down his face, his grin gone, replaced by rage. "This is not over." He spat, retreating into the shadows, his men dragging him away. "We will return, and when we do, none of you will survive." Their footsteps faded, leaving silence behind. The human dropped to one knee, his blood pooling on the stone, his chest rising and falling like fire. The girl ran to him, clutching the glowing amulet, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us again," she whispered. "Why? Why do you keep fighting?" The human looked at her, his eyes tired but steady. "Because someone must," he said simply. And in that cavern, lit only by the glow of the amulet, the truth of one human's will shone brighter than any blade. The cavern was silent after the robbers fled. The only sound was the drip of water from the ceiling and the heavy breathing of the human. He knelt on one knee, blood running down his arm, his shirt torn like the girl's, his body trembling with exhaustion. But still, his eyes were sharp, unbroken. The alien girl ran to him, the amulet glowing in her small hands. Her eyes were full of tears, her voice shaking. "You are hurt. You will die if we do not help you." The human looked at her, his lips curling into a faint smile. "I am still standing. That is enough." The girl's mother limped forward, her face pale but her spirit fierce. She placed a hand on the human's shoulder, her voice heavy with emotion. "You risked everything for us. You bled for a family that was not yours. Why?" The human's reply was quiet, but it echoed through the cavern like thunder. "Because no one else did. And because sometimes one act of courage can change everything." The girl's eyes filled with a new kind of light, not just tears but hope. She pressed the amulet to her chest, whispering, "I will never forget this night. I will never forget you." Above ground, news of the battle spread like wildfire. The crowd that once turned their eyes away now spoke of the human who stood against many. Some called him reckless, some called him foolish. But many began to whisper another word: hero. The robbers nursed their wounds in the shadows, their leader seething with rage. He vowed to return, to finish what he started. But in the silence of the cavern, the girl and her mother knew that the story had already changed. The power of fear had been broken, replaced by the memory of one man who would not bow. The human slowly stood, his body weak, but his will strong. He looked at the girl, at her torn shirt, at her trembling hands holding the amulet. "You must guard it now," he said. "You must keep it safe until the time comes. It is not my fight alone anymore." The girl nodded, her voice small but steady. "I will, I promise." Her mother bowed her head, a gesture of deep respect. "In my people's tradition, we honor those who fight for us with no blood tie, no debt, only courage. You are now part of our story, forever." The human lowered his gaze humbly. "I did what needed to be done, nothing more." But the girl shook her head, her voice breaking. "No, you did what no one else dared, and that is everything." She reached out and took his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his rough, blood-stained palm. It was a promise without words, a bond that no enemy could break. The crystals above glowed brighter as if hearing her vow. The amulet pulsed with a steady golden light, no longer a symbol of loss but of hope. The mother whispered, "Perhaps the heart forged does not only respond to power, perhaps it responds to spirit, to will, to sacrifice." The human closed his eyes for a moment, letting the silence wash over him. Then he said, "The robbers will come again, but when they do, you will not be alone. There are others who will stand if one man stands first." His words settled deep into the girl's heart. Stronger than any weapon, they left the cavern together, climbing slowly through the tunnels. The girl carried the amulet close, The human carried their hope. When they reached the surface, dawn was breaking. The sky painted with pale light. The city stirred, and the people looked at the human with new eyes. Some bowed their heads as he passed, ashamed that they had turned away when the family was attacked. Others whispered blessings, their voices carrying across the streets. The girl walked beside him, her torn shirt fluttering in the morning wind, her chin lifted with pride. For she was no longer just a helpless child. She was the keeper of a secret, and the witness to a man's courage. At the gates of the city, the human stopped, his eyes on the horizon. "This is where I go," he said, his voice quiet. The girl's heart clenched. "But you cannot leave. What if they come back? What if they hurt us again?" The human turned to her, kneeling so his eyes met hers. "They will come back, yes, but you are not the same child you were before. You have seen that fear can be broken. You have seen that even one can stand against many. That is the lesson you must carry." Tears streamed down her face, but she nodded, gripping his hand one last time. Her mother placed her hand on the human's shoulder, her voice heavy with gratitude. "You are forever bound to our family. Wherever you go, our prayers will follow." The human rose, his figure tall against the rising sun. Without another word, he walked toward the horizon, his shadow stretching long behind him. The girl stood at the gate, clutching the glowing amulet, watching until he vanished into the light. Her tears fell, but in her heart fire burned. She whispered, "You will never be forgotten, human. Never." The city would remember the night one man stood against an army. The robbers would remember the pain of facing a will stronger than fear, and the girl would carry the memory forever. Her torn shirt would be mended, her wounds would heal, but the lesson of courage would remain. One human had changed everything, not with power, not with wealth, but with the choice to fight for what was right, and that choice would echo through generations. A story told again and again. The story of the night when no one stood, except one. The story of the human who fought back.